The fluorescent lights in the hospital room hurt my eyes as I blinked awake for what felt like the 100th time. My name is Miranda Cole. I'm 31 years old, and 3 days ago I almost died at my desk because my sister thought tampering with life-saving medication would be funny. The doctors said I was lucky. Lucky that my coworker Amy noticed me slumping over my keyboard. Lucky that someone in our office knew how to check for diabetic shock. Lucky that the ambulance arrived within 8 minutes. I didn't feel lucky. I felt betrayed. I've been a type 1 diabetic since I was 12. 19 years of carefully managing my blood sugar, counting carbs, timing injections. 19 years of never missing a dose, never being careless. My insulin pen was always in my work bag, always labeled, always stored properly. It was as much a part of my routine as breathing. Until my sister decided it would make a great prank. The memory of that morning was fuzzy, but I remembered administering my usual dose before my 10 a.m. meeting. I remembered feeling fine initially. Then came the confusion, the trembling, the way my vision started to tunnel. By the time Amy was shaking my shoulder, asking if I was okay, I couldn't form words anymore. Diabetic ketoacidosis, the doctor had explained. My blood sugar had skyrocketed to dangerous levels because instead of insulin, I'd injected water, plain water. My body had gone into crisis mode, trying to process glucose it couldn't handle without insulin. Another hour, maybe less, and I would have been looking at permanent organ damage or worse. My phone buzzed on the hospital tray beside me. Mom calling, again. I'd ignored the last 7 calls, but I knew I couldn't avoid this conversation forever. Miranda, sweetie, how are you feeling? Her voice was overly bright, forced cheerfulness, masking obvious anxiety. I'm alive, I said flatly. No thanks to your other daughter. There was a heavy sigh on the other end. Honey, Vanessa feels terrible about this. She's been crying non-stop. She didn't mean for this to happen. It was just a silly joke that went wrong. A silly joke, that's what they were calling attempted manslaughter now. She swapped my insulin with water. Mom, my insulin. The medication that keeps me alive. I know, but she didn't understand how serious it was. You know Vanessa, she's always been impulsive, she doesn't think things through. She's 28 years old, I interrupted. My voice harder than I'd intended. She's not a child. She's a grown woman who has watched me manage diabetes for nearly 2 decades. She knows exactly what insulin does. She's seen me test my blood sugar 1,000 times. She's been there for the scary moments when my levels drop too low. She knows. My mother went quiet for a moment. In the background, I could hear my father's voice, low and murmuring, probably telling her to smooth this over, to make peace, to keep the family together. That was always their priority. Family harmony above everything else, even when one family member nearly killed another. Your father and I would like to come visit you. Mom said finally. And we think it would be good for you to talk to Vanessa. She wants to apologize properly. I leaned back against the pillows, staring at the IV line still attached to my arm. The sterile smell of the hospital, the constant beeping of monitors, the knowledge that I'd be dealing with the after effects of this for months. All of it made me tired in a way that had nothing to do with physical exhaustion. Fine, I said. Come tomorrow afternoon. Visiting hours are 2 to 6. I hung up before she could say anything else. The truth was, I already knew how this would play out. Vanessa would show up with red-rimmed eyes, mascara strategically smudged to show she'd been crying. She'd clutch my hand and sob about how sorry she was. How she never meant to hurt me. How it was just supposed to be funny. My parents would nod along, their expressions grave but ultimately forgiving. They'd tell me that family forgives family, that holding grudges only hurts everyone, that Vanessa made a mistake, but she's learned her lesson. And they'd expect me to smile, to hug her, to say it was all okay. But here's what they didn't know yet. I'd already spoken with the hospital billing department. I'd already reviewed my insurance coverage. I'd already done the math on what this prank was going to cost. 3 days in ICU. Emergency treatment, specialist consultations, the works. My insurance would cover part of it, but my out-of-pocket maximum was $8,000. Except there was a problem with how this was coded, since it was caused by someone else's deliberate action, not a natural health crisis. My insurance company was investigating whether this should be filed differently. The hospital's initial estimate, the one sitting in my email inbox right now, was $47,283. $47,283 for a prank. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Vanessa herself. Mir, I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this. Please talk to me. I love you, sis. I stared at the message for a long moment. Just 2 weeks ago, Vanessa had borrowed $200 from me for what she called a temporary cash flow problem. She'd never paid it back. 3 months before that, it was $500 for car repairs. Before that, $1,000 to help with her rent. My parents always encouraged me to help her out. She's your sister, they'd say. Family takes care of family. I'd helped her over and over, because that's what good sisters do. And this was how she'd repaid me. I didn't respond to her text. Instead, I opened my laptop. Amy had brought it from the office along with some clothes, and started documenting everything. The timeline of events, the statements from coworkers who'd witnessed my collapse, the medical reports detailing exactly what had happened to my body, the doctor's notes about how close I'd come to permanent damage, and most importantly, I began gathering evidence of something I'd discovered the day before, something that made this whole situation even worse than I'd initially thought. Because Vanessa's prank wasn't random. It wasn't impulsive. It wasn't just a stupid joke gone wrong. She'd planned it, and I was about to prove it. The next afternoon, my hospital room felt smaller with all 4 of them crammed inside. Mom clutched a bouquet of grocery store flowers. Dad stood awkwardly by the window, hands in his pockets, and Vanessa sat in the visitor's chair, tissues already in hand, her eyes puffy and red. "Miranda, sweetheart," Mom began, setting the flowers on the side table. "We're so grateful you're okay. We've all been so worried." I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. "Thanks for coming." Vanessa leaned forward, her voice cracking. "Mir, I am so sorry. I don't even know what I was thinking. I saw a video online where someone pranked their roommate by switching their contact solution with water, and I thought, I don't know what I thought. I'm an idiot. I never meant to actually hurt you. It was a good performance. I'd give her that." The trembling lip, the way she twisted the tissue in her hands, the crack in her voice at just the right moments. Our parents were eating it up, their faces softening with sympathy. "A video online," I repeated slowly. "That's what inspired you?" "Yeah, it was stupid, I know. It was just supposed to be funny. You were always so serious about your insulin routine, and I thought maybe if something harmless happened, you'd see that you don't have to be so stressed about everything all the time." My jaw tightened. "So you thought nearly killing me would help me relax?" "That's not, I didn't think it would." Vanessa dissolved into sobs, and Mom immediately moved to comfort her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Miranda, please," Dad said, his voice carrying that familiar tone of disappointment. "Your sister made a terrible mistake, but look at her. She's devastated. She's barely eaten or slept since this happened. We're asking you to find it in your heart to forgive her." I looked at each of them in turn. Mom stroking Vanessa's hair, Dad with his stern "let's be reasonable" expression, Vanessa peeking at me through her fingers, gauging my reaction. "Of course I forgive you," I said quietly. The relief in the room was palpable. Vanessa's head shot up, her eyes brightening. Mom actually pressed her hand to her chest, exhaling deeply. Dad's shoulders relaxed. "Really?" Vanessa asked, hope flooding her voice. "You mean it, really?" I said, managing a small smile. "It was an accident, a horrible, stupid accident, but you didn't mean to put me in the hospital. I understand that." Vanessa launched herself at me, wrapping me in a hug that pressed uncomfortably against my IV line. "Thank you, thank you, thank you. I promise I'll never do anything like this again. I'll be more careful. I'll think things through. I love you so much, Mir." "I love you too," I said, patting her back gently. My parents were beaming now, clearly proud of both their daughters for working it out. This was exactly what they'd wanted. Conflict resolved, family harmony restored, everyone moving forward. "I'm so glad you girls are okay," Mom said, wiping at her own eyes. "This is what family is about. Forgiveness, second chances." "Absolutely," I agreed. "We're family. We take care of each other." They stayed for another hour, the conversation shifting to lighter topics. Vanessa told me about her new job at the marketing firm, how her boss was already impressed with her work. Dad talked about his golf game. Mom mentioned the neighbor's new puppy. Everything felt normal, comfortable, like the past 3 days had been nothing but a bad dream. As they were preparing to leave, I reached for my phone. "Oh, before you go, I need to forward you guys something. Just some paperwork the hospital needs for their records." "Of course, honey," Mom said, gathering her purse. "Whatever you need." I pulled up my email and found the message from the hospital billing department, the one I'd received that morning with the updated cost breakdown. My finger hovered over the forward button. The hospital wants to make sure all contact information is current, I said casually. So they're sending copies of all the bills to family members listed as emergency contacts. Dad nodded absently, checking his watch. Sure, we'll keep an eye out for it. I hit send. Okay, sent it to both of you. You should have it now. Mom glanced at her phone and opened the email. I watched her face carefully. It took about 3 seconds for her expression to change. The smile faltering, her eyes widening as she scrolled, her face going pale. Miranda, she said slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. What is this? Dad pulled out his own phone, frowning. What's wrong? Vanessa looked between them, confused. What is it? Mom's hand was shaking as she held up her phone. It's the hospital bill, the total cost of Miranda's treatment. The room went silent, except for the steady beep of my heart monitor. $47,000. Dad read aloud, the color draining from his face. There must be some mistake. No mistake, I said, my voice calm and even. That's what it costs when someone's prank puts you in intensive care for 3 days. Emergency treatment, specialist consultations, ICU room fees, medication, monitoring equipment. It all adds up. Vanessa's mouth opened and closed soundlessly, her earlier tears forgotten. But your insurance, Mom started, will cover some of it, I confirmed. After the investigation into whether this qualifies as an assault rather than a medical emergency. Either way, my out-of-pocket costs are substantial, and that's not counting the lost wages from missing work, or the ongoing medical monitoring I'll need for the next several months to ensure there's no lasting damage. Dad sank into the chair Vanessa had vacated, staring at his phone like it might explode. $47,000, give or take, I said pleasantly. The final bill might be higher once they finish processing everything. Vanessa finally found her voice, though it came out as a squeak. I don't have that kind of money. I know, I replied, meeting her eyes steadily. Neither do I. That's going to be a problem, isn't it? The silence in my hospital room stretched on, thick and uncomfortable. Mom had gone completely still, her eyes fixed on her phone screen like she was hoping the numbers would somehow rearrange themselves into something more manageable. Dad kept refreshing his email, as if the figure might change with each reload. Vanessa looked like she might throw up. This can't be right, Dad said finally, his voice hoarse. Insurance has to cover more than this. They have to. You'd think so, I said, adjusting my pillow behind me. But when the insurance company investigator came by yesterday, she had some interesting questions, like whether this was an accident or an intentional act. Because if it's intentional, it changes everything about how the claim is processed. It was an accident, Vanessa said quickly, panic creeping into her voice. I already said that. I didn't mean. That's the thing though, I interrupted gently. I've been thinking about that a lot over the past few days. Lying here, hooked up to machines, wondering how you managed to swap my insulin without me noticing. Mom's head snapped up. Miranda, what are you saying? I reached for my laptop on the bedside table, opening it to a folder I'd created. I'm saying that I started remembering some details, like how you were at my apartment 2 weeks ago, Vanessa. Remember? You said you needed to borrow my black dress for a date. So? Vanessa's voice had taken on a defensive edge. So I couldn't find my spare insulin pen for 3 days after that visit. I thought I'd misplaced it, even called the pharmacy to order a replacement. But then it mysteriously reappeared in my medicine cabinet right before you came over for dinner last Tuesday. Dad frowned. What does that have to do with? She needed time to practice, I said, looking directly at Vanessa. You had to figure out how to open the pen cartridge without breaking it, how to extract the insulin, how to refill it with water, so the weight felt right. That takes trial and error, doesn't it? Vanessa's face had gone white. You're being paranoid. I found your pen under your bathroom sink and put it back. That's all. Maybe, I said. Except I also checked my apartment's security footage. My building installed cameras in all the hallways 6 months ago. Did you know that? The color that had drained from Vanessa's face now seemed to drain from my parents' faces too. The footage shows you arriving at my apartment on October 3rd. That's the day you borrowed the dress. You were there for 20 minutes. But here's what's interesting. You made 2 more trips to my building after that, October 8th and October 12th. Both times when I was at work. Both times you let yourself in with the spare key I gave you for emergencies. I needed to. Vanessa stammered. The building manager was very helpful when I explained the situation. I continued. He's preparing a full report of all your visits for the insurance investigation and the police investigation. Police? Mom's voice came out as a whisper. I nodded. Detective Morris came by this morning. Apparently when someone deliberately tampers with life-saving medication, it's not just a prank, it's assault, potentially even attempted manslaughter, depending on how the DA's office wants to proceed. No, Vanessa said, shaking her head frantically. No, no, no. Mir, please. I'm your sister. You said you forgave me. I said I understood it was an accident. I corrected. But if it wasn't an accident, if you planned this, practiced it, then came to my home multiple times to set it up, that's not something I can just forgive and forget, is it? Dad stood abruptly. Miranda, you can't seriously be considering pressing charges against your own sister. I don't want to, I said, honestly. I really don't. But right now, I'm facing nearly $50,000 in medical bills for something that was done to me deliberately. The hospital needs to be paid. My insurance company needs to determine liability. And I need to figure out how to move forward with my life knowing that someone I trusted, someone I've helped financially for years tried to hurt me. She didn't try to hurt you, Mom protested, but her voice lacked conviction. Then what was the goal? I asked. What was supposed to happen when I injected water instead of insulin? Did you think nothing would happen? Did you even bother to research what happens to a diabetic who doesn't get their medication? Vanessa was crying again, but these tears looked different, less calculated, more genuine. I didn't think it would be that bad. I thought maybe you'd feel sick. Maybe you'd go home early from work, and then you'd realize it was water, and you'd call me freaking out and I'd confess and we'd laugh about it, and laugh about it. My voice was sharper now. You thought I'd laugh about nearly dying. You're always so perfect, Vanessa burst out. Perfect job, perfect apartment, perfect health management, perfect everything. Everyone always talks about how responsible Miranda is, how together you have your life. I just wanted to prove you're not as perfect as everyone thinks, that you could mess up too. The room fell silent again. Mom looked horrified. Dad looked lost. And Vanessa looked like she'd just realized what she'd admitted. So this wasn't about a funny video you saw online, I said quietly. This was about taking me down a peg, about making me look foolish or careless or incompetent. Vanessa didn't answer, but she didn't need to. Her silence was confirmation enough. I closed my laptop and set it aside. Here's what's going to happen. The insurance investigator is completing her report. The police are building their case. And the hospital will proceed with collecting payment for my treatment. How all of that plays out, well, that depends on what happens next. What do you mean? Dad asked warily. I looked at each of them in turn. My parents who'd always asked me to be the bigger person, to forgive, to keep the peace. And my sister who'd repaid my years of help by nearly killing me. I mean, I said slowly, that we need to have a very honest conversation about accountability, consequences, and what family really means. Because right now, I'm not sure we all have the same definition.